Is it more difficult to explore self while in a relation? It is more difficult to explore self while in a relationship because of the pattern of relationship are more restrictive. Well, I would say it could be. The other thing I would point out is that you are trucking along in life. You're moving along in life, you're doing your thing, and you're responding to your conditioning. And oftentimes when we arrive at, I don't know, like a channel like mine, or you arrive at learning about attachment styles, or you get a reading recommendation, or a friend says, hey, you should watch this video because it sounds like what we were talking about on Saturday, right? And you've been kind of, there's usually when we come to a place where we recognize that there's something about the way I've been operating that I want to change, or there's something about these patterns that I must play a role in because it keeps happening, or typically it's because there's a change that is already underway within you, that there's a wave of something that's already shifting beneath the surface. And now your external world is starting to, let's say, fire signs at you that it's time for that surfacing thing to burgeon, to really come out, to rise. And so it sometimes pops out like a catalytic relationship. Oftentimes, particularly for those in this community, it pops out like a catalytic kind of experience. But sometimes it comes out like a sense of spiritual aridity. So sometimes it comes out when everything's going fine, everything's hunky-dory, and you're sort of the one being accused of messing things up. But it's because there is this indescribable need, want, yearning, itchy, scratchy feeling beneath the skin, and you cannot explain it. And so things in the universe kind of end up in your way that tell you there's something that's got to change here, right? But all the way up until that point, everything in your life, the people, friends, family, circumstances, job, all of that stuff has been a reflection of who you were, how you were operating for years, if not the entirety of your life up until this point. And all of that, in the way that we have talked about responding to our own relationship to ourselves, how our environments are just responding to our own relationship to ourselves, everything that you will find in your circumstances and in your environment and in your friends and in your lovers is a response to what you have been. And now something else is emerging, and you are going to be faced with the decision. Am I going to embrace that something else? Am I going to follow it? Am I going to pursue it? Am I going to allow myself to move into alignment with it? Or am I going to operate on these fear-based beliefs, which may or may not actually be true, that if I do align with that piece, am I going to lose this relationship? Because the truth is, you might. You might. That's not necessarily the fear-based belief. That is a real possibility. The fear-based belief is that you won't survive it. The fear-based belief is that that wouldn't actually be the best thing for you, right? The fear-based belief is that you will not actually be better as a result of it. So we resist it for a long time until it's like you ignore it for so long. Now you've either got some kind of malady, or again, something blows up in the relationship. But just keep in mind that if that's the case, then sometimes it is hard to go on that journey in relationship, because if you have been in relationship up until that point, it's a relationship that is going to have to change with you. If you make the decision that this change is essential to my soul's expansion, and I cannot abandon myself. And yes, I am willing to give up this relationship in order to follow my soul's path, because there's something bigger that I am trying to affect as a result of it. Erik Erikson talked about this. He was a social psychologist. And he talked about this in terms of life crises, that as we develop and as we grow older, we have different phases of our mental and emotional growth and development, and that each of these phases he actually called a crisis. And that means that we can anticipate that in certain phases of life, we will experience, just as a normal course of development, very significant conflicts and crises that are so profound that they jettison us into a next phase of development. Okay. So, most of the people in my group are in their 30s or they're in their 40s or midlife. And, this is when we start to step into like the phase of generativity, when we're starting to think about what is my contribution to the whole, when we're starting to think about, is this all there is to life? What more meaning and sense of purpose can I derive from my time here on earth? We become keenly aware that, wow, I've lived, a larger portion of the first part of my life. Now maybe I've only got like 2/3, 3/4, or 50% of the way to go. And I want the rest of my life to be more internally directed, as opposed to a response to the expectations of my parents, friends, family members, society, and what it is that I've told myself is going to make me happy. But now that I've got it all, doesn't actually make me happy. Right? So sometimes we arrive at that place. And to get back to the original question, when we arrive at that place, we are often surrounded by things that we have created when we are seeking to create new things. And so if you are in an environment where you are mired in something that has been created, then it is likely that you will experience it as restrictive, and it will not actually afford you the ability to connect authentically, which we are hardwired to do, right? So then you have to make some difficult decisions, usually. I hope that makes sense. All right.